This deep dive into e-commerce psychology is powered by Growth Suite. Growth Suite helps you run smart discount campaigns on your store. Test it for free on your Shopify store. Just land on the Shopify App Store now and test it for free. Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we dig into fascinating sources and pull out the insights that matter most to you. Today, we're really getting into our heads, specifically looking at how your brain handles marketing messages. We're exploring the really interesting differences in how we process stories versus plain old statistics.
And we're basing this on a great article that delves into neuromarketing, really focusing on this story versus stats thing.
Exactly. And our mission really is to figure out why some ads or messages just click, They stick with you emotionally.
While others, even packed with impressive numbers, just fall flat. And, more importantly, what you can actually do with that insight.
Yeah, how you can use this. Because, let's face it, we're swimming in information. The source mentions we might see up to, 10,000 marketing messages a day?
It's incredible, isn't it? 10,000. You can't possibly process all that consciously.
No way. So understanding how the brain filters this stuff automatically becomes essential for anyone trying to communicate effectively.
Absolutely. Your brain has these built-in shortcuts, these systems, and they react very, very differently depending on how information is presented. Stories versus stats is a prime example.
Okay, so let's unpack that. The article kicks off by explaining these two main brain systems for processing information. It's not just one big computer up there.
Right. Think of it more like two different gears, or maybe two modes, System 1 and System 2.
System 1, that's the fast one.
That's the one. It's your brain's autopilot. Quick, intuitive, emotional, takes almost no conscious effort. And this is the system that really lights up when it encounters a story. Testimonials, case studies, they tap right into this. It creates these immediate, often subconscious feelings and responses.
Okay, so that's System 1, fast and feeling. What about System 2?
System 2 is the opposite, really. It's slow, deliberate, analytical. It requires actual mental effort.
Like doing math problems.
Exactly like that. Complex calculations, logical reasoning, sifting through data sheets, comparing specs. That's all System 2 work. It engages different parts of the brain, like the prefrontal cortex.
Got it. So story hits the fast, emotional system, stats hit the slow, analytical one.
Pretty much. But here's the kicker, the really surprising part from the source. It suggests that around 95% of our purchasing decisions are actually driven by System 1.
Wait, 95? Seriously? Even for, buying a car or something?
It sounds counterintuitive, I know. We all like to think we're rational shoppers, carefully weighing the options.
Yeah.
But think about the sheer volume of decisions we make. Relying on slow, effortful System 2 for everything, we'd be paralyzed. System 1 gives us that quick gut feeling, yeah, this feels right, or, I'm not sure about this.
And System 2 just comes in later to justify it.
Often, yes. It provides the rational arguments for a choice that System 1 already nudged us towards. It's fascinating stuff.
Wow. Okay. So this heavy reliance on the fast, emotional System 1, is that just how we are now, or does it go deeper?
Oh, it goes way deeper. The article makes a strong case that this is evolutionary. It's baked into our DNA.
How so?
Think back to, prehistoric times. Before writing, how did crucial survival knowledge get passed down?
Talking, I guess. Telling stories?
Exactly. The source uses this brilliant example. Imagine trying to teach someone which berries are poisonous. Would you use a statistic like there's a 97% correlation between these speckled red berries and severe illness?
Probably not very effective, no.
Or would you tell the story? Remember Cousin Og down by the river? He ate those speckled red berries.
Yeah.
Wasn't pretty. We almost lost him.
Oh, okay, yeah, Cousin Og. I immediately picture it, feel a little bit of worry. The statistic is just numbers.
Precisely. The story connects emotionally. It's memorable. It carries weight because it involves people and consequences. That ancient wiring is still incredibly powerful today.
So brands using stories are tapping into that old pathway.
In a way, yes. They become the modern storytellers, conveying values, building connections, making their offerings feel meaningful on that deeper System 1 level.
But we live in the age of data now. Clicks, conversions, metrics for everything. Marketing is supposed to be data-driven.
And that's the paradox, isn't it? We have more data than ever before, aimed squarely at our analytical system too.
Right.
But consumers are drowning in it. There's this statistical overload, this fatigue. Our poor System 2 just can't keep up with the constant barrage of numbers and graphs.
So how do marketers reconcile this ancient story brain meeting this modern data flood? Where's the balance?
That's the million-dollar question the article tackles. And to answer it, we need to look a bit closer at what's actually happening inside the brain, the neuroscience bit.
Okay, let's peek under the hood. What do brain scans show?
Well, using techniques like fMRI, scientists can see which brain areas activate. When you hear a good story, multiple regions light up. Areas for visualizing the narrative, like you're watching a movie in your head. Areas involved with empathy and social connection, feeling with the characters. And crucially, the amygdala and hippocampus, key players in emotion and memory formation.
Emotion and memory, okay.
Which explains that the source mentions facts embedded in stories, are remembered up to 22 times better than just plain facts.
22 times. That's incredible. The story acts like Velcro for the information.
It really does. And there's this other cool thing called neural coupling. When you're really engrossed in a story, your brain activity patterns can start to mirror the storyteller's.
Whoa, like a mind meld.
It's the closest thing we know to it. It creates this deep sense of shared experience and understanding.
Okay, that's powerful stuff for stories.
Yeah.
What about when the brain sees statistics? What lights up then?
Different areas take the lead. More towards the front, the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, involved in analytical thought, evaluation, fact-checking.
The serious thinking cap part.
Yeah, and areas like the intraparietal sulcus, which handles numerical reasoning and assessing risk. But the key difference, and the article stresses this, is the effort.
Right, system 2 is hard work.
It really is. Those analytical regions fatigue much faster than the regions engaged by stories. That's why reading a dense report feels exhausting compared to getting lost in a novel. Statistics can easily overload your working memory.
I've definitely felt that brain drain from staring at spreadsheets.
We all have, and the brain chemistry reflects this too. Good stories can trigger dopamine, the reward molecule, making the experience pleasurable and memorable.
Ah, the feel-good chemical.
Exactly. And relatable narratives can release oxytocin, the trust or bonding hormone. Think about brands that build a strong community, feel they're often tapping into this.
And the flip side, what happens with confusing or overwhelming data?
That can actually spike cortisol, the stress hormone. Your brain essentially says, this is difficult and unpleasant, let's avoid this, which is the last thing you want your marketing message to do.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
Okay, so translating this all back to the real world, what's the bottom line for consumer behavior? How does this impact recall, decisions, all that?
Well, the impact on memory is huge, as we said. That 22x recall advantage is massive in a crowded market. People remember Airbnb's host stories, not just their growth charts initially.
Right, the human element sticks.
And there's persuasion. It gets interesting here. The source talks about anecdotal bias, especially in areas with high emotion like healthcare decisions or buying luxury goods. A single compelling story or testimonial can often outweigh piles of statistical data for many people.
So one person's powerful story can just bypass all the logical numbers.
It often does.
Yeah.
System 1 gets hooked by the story. Now, stats do persuade, don't get me wrong, especially for, say, engineers buying technical equipment or in B2B sales where data validation is key. But even then, presenting that data within a narrative context makes it more digestible and persuasive. And culture plays a role too. Collectivist versus individualist societies might respond differently. But fundamentally, most big decisions involve both systems, the initial emotional pull and the later rational justification.
What about just pure emotional engagement, getting people excited?
Stories win there, hands down. The article cites studies showing narrative content boosting purchase intent by up to 30%.
30%, that's significant.
It is. And those fMRI studies, they show that emotionally engaging stories activate the brain's reward pathways, the same areas that light up when you actually use or experience something enjoyable.
So the story gives you a little taste of the reward.
Exactly. A neural pre-experience. It builds anticipation. Think about unboxing videos or those day-in-the-life ads showing someone happily using a product. They let your brain simulate the positive outcome.
This is all incredibly insightful. But, okay, let's get practical. How can someone listening right now actually apply this brain science in their product marketing?
Good question. It's about being strategic. The source lays out some frameworks. For storytelling, you've got classics like The Hero's Journey.
Where the customer is the hero.
Precisely. And your product is the tool or mentor that helps them succeed. Think apples, think different. The users were the heroes.
Right.
Or you can use sensory layering, making your story vivid by including details that engage sight, sound, maybe even touch or smell, like Coke does.
The fizz, the cold can.
Yep. And for today's world, microstories are key, short, impactful narratives for social media, maybe focusing on one transformation. And crucially, focus on relatability. User-generated stories often beat slick professional ones because they feel more authentic, triggering more empathy.
Okay, so lots of ways to tell stories. What about making the stats work better, not just ditching them entirely?
Definitely don't ditch them, just make them smarter. Data visualization is essential. Use clear infographics, charts, anything to reduce that cognitive load on System 2.
Make it easy to grasp.
Exactly. Personalized analytics are powerful too. Data that's about you is way more engaging. Spotify Wrapped is the perfect example.
Ah, yeah, everyone loves their Wrapped.
Because it turns dry data into your personal story. And think about anchoring how you present numbers matters. Show a premium option first, maybe, and timing, as the article notes.
When do you show the numbers?
Ideally, after you've established some emotional connection with the story, hook them first, then provide the supporting data. It's received more favorably then.
So lead with the heart, follow with the head.
That's a great way to put it. Which brings us to the most powerful approach. Hybrid. Blending them together. Story data fusion.
How's that look?
It's about embedding the stats within the story. So instead of just 92% efficiency gain, it's Sarah tried 6 different tools. She was so frustrated. Story. Then she found ours, and boom, 92% efficiency gain. Stat with context.
Okay, the stat becomes proof of Sarah's success. It has meaning.
Precisely. Nike does this well with sustainability. The data isn't just a report, it's woven into stories about athletes and innovation. The article even suggests a potential sweet spot, maybe around 70% story, 30% stats for many products.
A rough guideline obviously depends on the context.
Absolutely. Always depends on the product, audience, industry.
So if you start applying these ideas, how do you know if it's actually working on that neurological level? Can you measure brain response? Sounds expensive.
Well, the gold standard tools like fMRI are expensive, yeah. Big brands use them. But there are more accessible neuro tools now, like EEG headbands that measure electrical activity for engagement, or GSR sensors tracking subtle sweat changes indicating emotional arousal.
Interesting. So options exist beyond fMRI.
They do. Neuromarketing firms offer these. But even without those, you can use standard behavioral metrics as really good proxies.
Like what?
Good old A/B testing. Test a story-led message against a data-led one, which gets more clicks, more conversions, higher engagement.
So you look at things like how long people stay on the page.
Exactly. Dwell time is a great indicator. The source mentions narrative content often hold attention maybe 40% longer, and conversion rates, story-driven calls to action, can perform significantly better, maybe 30% higher.
So tracking those behaviors gives you clues about the underlying brain engagement.
It's a very strong indicator, yes. Combining those metrics gives you a much clearer picture.
Okay, so we have these powerful techniques. We can even measure their effects, which probably brings us to ethics, right?
It really has to. With the ability to tap into brain chemistry, to trigger dopamine or oxytocin, there comes a real responsibility.
It's not just about persuasion anymore. It borders on manipulation if you're not careful.
That's the concern. The article highlights the need for transparency. Should brands disclose when they're using sophisticated neuromarketing techniques, especially for things like health products or finance?
That's a tough question.
It is. The consensus seems to be moving towards using these insights to create genuine value, make content that people want to engage with because it resonates, it helps them, it entertains them, not just because it cleverly bypasses their rational thought. Build real connection.
That makes sense. Use the science for good, basically. Can we look at some examples? Who's doing this well, either story-led, data-led, or hybrid?
Sure. Dove's Real Beauty is a classic story for success, focused on emotion, self-acceptance, huge impact on brand perception and sales. Oxytocin boost right there. Yeah. Or think about Huawei when they faced security concerns. They shifted from specs to stories, user stories, validator stories to rebuild trust, which is fundamentally emotional.
Okay, so stories for trust and emotion. What about data-driven examples?
Volvo and safety. Safety is emotional, but they use hard stats, 1 million lives saved, to provide that crucial rational reassurance. The data serves the core emotional need.
Right, the numbers prove the safety promise.
Exactly. And even tech platforms selling ads based on performance, like Meta, they don't just dump data. They use slick visualization, personalized dashboards. They make the stats easy to digest and relevant to your goals.
Making the data less intimidating.
Yep. And for hybrid, Google's Year in Search is genius.
Oh yeah, those are powerful.
They take pure global data, massive statistics, but weave them into incredibly human emotional stories about our collective year. It connects the numbers to life.
And Spotify Wrapped does that on a personal level.
Perfect example. Your listening stats turned into your personal year-in-review story. It's data made emotional and shareable.
Brilliant. So looking forward, what's next? Where's this field heading?
It's moving fast. Technology is a big driver. Think generative AI creating personalized stories on the fly, adapting to your detected mood or preferences.
Wow, real-time adaptive narratives.
Potentially. And things like neurofeedback ads, maybe using webcams to gauge your reaction and tweaking the ad content. Still experimental, but being explored.
Okay, that definitely bumps up the ethical considerations again.
Absolutely, which is why the conversation around ethical frameworks and potential regulation is growing. We're seeing moves in the EU, for instance. Plus, consumer awareness is increasing.
People are getting savvier about how marketing works.
They are, and cultural adaptation will be huge too. What resonates neurologically in one culture might differ in another. Brands need to localize not just language, but potentially the story-statistic balance itself.
So it's getting even more complex, really. Understanding the nuances of the human mind across different contexts.
It really is. No simple answers, but fascinating territory.
Okay, let's try and summarize this journey. What are the absolute key takeaways for someone listening?
All right, 1. Stories and stats hit different brain systems. Emotional memory versus analytical effort. Remember that fundamental split.
Got it.
2. The best marketing usually engages both. Connect with the heart, system 1, and satisfy the mind, system 2.
Heart and mind, okay.
3. That 70% story, 30% stats ratio, it's a useful starting point, a guideline to consider, but always adapt it to your specific situation.
Test and learn.
Exactly. And 4. This isn't just theory. Better neurological engagement genuinely links to better results, memorability, persuasion, connection, sales.
And practically, what should people listening do? First, maybe audit your current stuff. Are you too data heavy? Could a story make your point stronger? Second, try blending them. Think about weaving those key stats into a relatable narrative. Maybe train your team on this idea of neurocopywriting. Third, experiment. Use A/B tests. See what balance actually moves the needle for your audience. And fourth, even without fancy tools, track those behavioral clues: dwell time. Conversions, they tell you a lot about engagement.
Because ultimately, as neuroscientist Antonio Damasio put it, we aren't thinking machines that feel.
We are feeling machines that think.
Precisely. And our marketing needs to acknowledge that fundamental truth.
So the final thought here isn't about choosing sides, story, or stats. It's about finding that perfect blend, that neurological symphony that truly connects with people on both levels. How can you create that symphony? That's something worth thinking about.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into e-commerce psychology.
This deep dive was powered by Growth Suite. Growth Suite helps you run smart discount campaigns on your store. Test it for free on your Shopify store. Just land on the Shopify App Store now and test it for free. We hope you continue exploring this fascinating topic.